Well, we're here today. Thank you for coming. Really, seriously, this is going to be one of the first podcasts that we've done that doesn't involve just me and somebody that works for me. So we have Tony Quiroz from GoDaddy. Are you still in the CX department?
Brand creative research now. So we're always morphing our org around there, but same mission, research and strategy.
Awesome.
Yeah, just a little bit different vantage point of the business.
Perfect. Yeah. And then we have Marisa Costagliola.
Pretty close. Costagliola.
Costagliola. It's such a hard one. And I even practiced it too. I was like, Costagliola. I can't even say it now. Now it's in my, it's okay. Wrong in my head.
I just go by Marisa. Kind of like Cher.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you are unemployed.
Yep,
and
proudly.
Going to school. No, you're happily going to ASU. What's the program that you're in?
It's an MSD in experience design. So it's at the Mesa Mix Center.
Awesome. And just so you know, she used to work here, and she gave it up. And everybody in the world's going, "What the hell did you do?"
That's fair. That's true.
Hey, she had to chase a dream.
Yep.
And you're young enough to do it. So that's good.
I've been to that school. It's amazing. It's inspirational. I imagine you're got a lot of ideas about where to go next.
Yeah, too many, actually.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're going to be talking about career pathing in the user experience space, right? A lot of people out there are going to school, doing this stuff, or doing things that they think they're going to be a user experience professional. Maybe we can give them some insight of how to get there and where do they have to go? What do they have to learn after school? God knows that you don't learn everything while you're in school, but the ASU program is pretty good. The HSC program, the Masters of UX program, I mean, it's definitely getting people faster to the right area.
I'm still connected to the GIT school out there in Mesa, the Polytechnic campus.
Yeah, the GITs, yeah.
The students, the caliber, the projects, the things they're doing, the way they communicate, it's just amazing, actually, what's coming out of it these days. It's really good.
That's awesome.
And I think about when I started, I don't know if there was a degree program in this. I don't think there was, actually.
No. I know when I moved here, I looked it up. I was trying to find something that smelled like, well, at the time I didn't even know really user experience as much, but the design school was fragmented, or it was everywhere. Like you couldn't really figure it out. And I wasn't thinking I was looking more for bachelors of art, right? Or fine arts or something in that area. And I'm like, oh, they didn't have the program that I had at UMass. It was under like a master's of science. And I'm like, well, that seems not right? Like I wasn't thinking it that way back then, right? And I was thinking art, and thinking, design, and you're designing books and designing products and things like that. It wasn't necessarily coming to me in the science space, which I think we would agree that it's in the science space.
Yep. Computer sciences, human factors, right? That's foundational.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe come to our first question. For someone coming out of these degrees, right, what skills or experiences best prepare them for this world of user experience?
You want to take this one first?
Well, I'm looking at you because you're about to come out of a program, and this might be fresh in your mind. So I'm just curious, what are you thinking about as you get ready to re-enter the job world?
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said, where there are students currently at ASU that are doing really good work. And I think I agree. They are doing excellent work. I've seen a lot of portfolios, and they're just beautiful and really detailed. I think the thing to focus on from academia to industry is just the scale of projects, because sometimes you're working with portfolio projects that are a smaller scale, and then you get to industry and you're working with these massive data sets and these really big clients, and it's just kind of a culture shock almost. So I'm actually not even sure how to practice that without getting that experience. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's an adaptability element, and that's one thing I think that the programs are teaching these days by giving exposure to lots of different phases of design, from the research part, right, into kind of like doing some testing, prototyping, and then high fidelity. And I've even seen projects where they're redesigning websites, like not from scratch, but like let's see what's going on with this, analyze it, make it better, change it, that kind of thing. When I think about coming out, it's a lot of what you just said, that you're going to have a certain amount of experience, but the role may be big or small. You may own that whole process at an agency or a big chunk of it, or you may be working on this page, right? You know, your job, you're on this team and you optimize this page, and that's the UX that you care about. Yeah. That's such a grand scale. And so you have to be ready to take what you're doing, understand in the context of the org that you're going into as they're talking about the role and all that, like where it's going to fit, and then start to apply your skills and grow from that point out. So I think that's one big one, you know, that comes to mind is adaptability.
Yeah, I mean, God knows we're not going to be able to find the perfect job after this, right? You should not go out there thinking, I'm going to wait for the perfect job, because you're going to be waiting for a long time, especially maybe in the climate that we're in right now too. You know, like the ability to apply the skills that you just learned for other types of jobs, just to get your, feet wet. I think you should take it, because that now is an experience that you just gained. I don't believe in waiting for that perfect job right away, especially when you're young and you can bounce and you can do things right away. You know, but when you get into that work, no matter what it is, apply the skills that you literally just learned, and it will work. It doesn't have to be a branded UX designer job for you to apply those skills. That's what's great about human systems engineering.
Yeah, when I got my start, again, I didn't have the benefit of a degree in the education. Yeah. What I had is I had taught myself programming. I had one professor who knew about the internet. It's like, this is going to be big. And he was right. Yep. But I started doing websites out of really a hobby and interest, and it was bands. It was local authors. It was very small business. I did a couple of websites, and then people were like, oh, you do websites? Could you do one for me? Could you do one for me? Next thing you know, through that, I met the person who gave me my first real job. Yeah. Come work at our ad desk. Can you be a webmaster? Oh, sure, no problem. What's a webmaster?
Yeah, exactly. Sounds official.
Yeah.
Do I get a scepter?
Exactly.
Or like some kind of.
They always have these great, interesting titles like that. Yeah. But I agree. I mean, being active and not waiting, like in your interim, find where you can plug in, where you can do things. Yeah. I remember meeting you through the UX and AZ meetup group, right? Yeah. I mean, you were out mixing it up. You were starting to participate, find ways that you can contribute, network, show some of your talents. That's always been a case.
That's it.
It starts to kind of light the fire for what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. I don't have it prepared, but maybe I'll flash it up on the screen. But there's a event of value that I've always referred to. I referred it to you when you first started. Being available and having relationships in our industry is key, because you're a user experience person. You need to understand people. You can't do it from a cave, and you need to get out and understand that. You have to interact. And I think the more you interact with a human being, the more you're going to empathize with them and understand them. And you can, again, learn and apply that to them. Like, their business. You can probably get it persona type, work done on, at home. But you're really, truly not going to learn them until you actually meet them and talk to them. So I would say the most important part of coming out of this college is don't stop. You got to keep being available to everyone around you, because you never know who you're going to meet at a meetup. I met you.
Right.
There's so many things I learned from you. And I met Russ, and that's really turned it around, because then we really started talking about the UX Master's course, right? Or the UX Master's degree. I'm thinking small, like I was thinking UX 101.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, screw that. Let's go big, right? Like,
yep.
And I remember it like it was yesterday. We're at Four Peaks over on 8th Street, and we're just sitting there, and we're talking about stuff. And I was interested in teaching a course, And I was like, do you have like a UX 101 course? And he goes, unfortunately, we don't. I probably could have done GIT. That was where it came from. But he was like, man, I think there's something here. We can do that. And then all of a sudden, we get all these people graduating now from the UX Masters course, which is a great place to go when you're coming out of GIT or HSC and going, where do I go now? Right there. There it is. So I don't know. Be available. I guess the key is be available to everyone and create relationships. You have skill. You may not have enough skill. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. If you don't have anybody to give it to, you're probably not going to be able to even practice your skill and have any value for anyone else.
Based on what we've seen coming out of ASU's grad program, I think the students are coming out with really solid skills in terms of their analysis and how they're presenting it on their portfolios, and it's looking really clean and beautiful and detailed. The thing that I wish I would have been a little more privy to coming out of school or getting into UX, for example, is just understanding the differences between academia and going into the industry, and how sometimes in academia we work on smaller projects that are maybe a little bit more feasible to do within the semester. And then you get into the industry and you see these massive systems that you're then, told this is a redesign. And it's just, a 20-year long project that we're doing in 6 months. And you just have to kind of flip your brain into, okay, how do I now take what I've learned? And then, bring it into this huge scalable solution now.
Yeah, it's one of the things we were saying is that schools like ASU are giving you such a good exposure to all phases of design, right? But when you go out to seek the job, like all companies are doing it a little different. And at an agency, you might cover the full end-to-end process or a good chunk of that, or you may end up specializing just in like this page, like this is your part of the experience, you're making this good, and that's your focus for the next 2 years or whatever it's going to be. And so the adaptability is you're going to come out with a good foundational knowledge of the design process and the different components, but don't be fooled into thinking like that's it, now I'm going to go find a job and do this. You'll do a part of it, or you'll do an adaptation of it, or you'll fit into a team where you're partnering with people to do that. That's the adaptable part, and that comes back to like active listening, good questioning about their design process, how they're doing things, where you could put your skills, and then start to grow from there.
Yeah, and I was actually, oddly enough, I had a mentor meeting this morning, and we were talking about what he needs to do to get another job, get up to speed on maybe some things that he missed at being at his other job, and how you're at a job for a while and you kind of start losing it, or you start missing out if you're only kind of focused on one aspect of the job. And I said the biggest thing for me was, or what I see, is that you're going to do a lot of things, and a lot of these things you may want to, or you may think about them benefiting yourself, right? Like you're sitting here and you're doing stuff, and I want to do the right thing, and it's usually if I feel good about it, if I get rewarded about it, if I'm the one, like all about me, not me, but the person that's trying to do this. And really what you need to do is flip it. Anything that I'm doing should be about the person that I'm doing it to and helping them. In turn, that comes back, and it's more it's more extrinsic than intrinsic when you're thinking about user experience. And it shouldn't your benefit me first is not the answer. Benefit you first is the answer. As a person in the field, yeah, it's nice to get accolades and get rewarded and things like that, but that's not what the job is about. The job is about listening and about figuring out how I can better the life of the person that's in front of me. And I think that could even be a lesson in life, in a way, that you're able to do that kind of, or separate that kind of thing, and don't expect reward. And hopefully you do. Hopefully you get rewarded by somebody being happy about you doing something. And you learn that from doing user experience. I do believe you don't learn that by learning how to do Photoshop, and tools like that. I think that's a thing that I guess my point is, when you're coming out of school, you knowing how to do Figma isn't really the person isn't the person I'm hiring. It's the person that can get behind empathy, can get behind process, using the tools that you learn, of course, but those are the major things that I feel I look at. How do you team? How do you talk to people? Are you an angry person? Are you dismissive? Are you like, hey, where's my star kind of person? Or are you like, hey, that makes sense, we should do that, even though that doesn't benefit me, and even though that kind of may even hurt my feelings? It's not really about your feelings, it's about theirs. That's how I feel about it when I'm seeing people come in from school. They are hungry. I'm ready to ride that ride. I'm ready to ride their ride, right? Because they're hungry. We've been doing this forever. I'm ready to ride their ride because they're definitely excitable and they want to do a great job. Sometimes you have to almost teach them to be consistent with that energy. I've found. I don't know if you find that with a younger person coming in. They're like a bull in a china shop as far as what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, what I look for is what makes us want to be designers in the first part, which is like, we want a deep understanding of what we're doing. We want to listen and explore. We want to kind of get at a root, make things better, right? And so like the good designers may worry that I don't have the experience, I don't have the skills. And sometimes that is a problem. I mean, those senior design positions absolutely, you got to have that. Yeah. But a lot, the building blocks of a good designer, they come in and instead of the bull in the china shop, they're asking a few good questions. Right. They're listening to you and understanding and asking the next good question. Pretty soon you feel like, you can teach the other stuff, but I see that way that mind is working, and that I want that mind working over here.
That's a huge point. That is a huge point, because oftentimes you give a direction and they go, I got it. They fly off. 3 days later, they come back. It's like, ooh, you didn't get it. Oh, I didn't know. You didn't tell me. Well, that's your chance at that point to ask the questions, like you're saying, to be able to have that ability to and feel comfortable saying, I don't understand. Of course you don't. Like you're brand new to this. It's if you knew everything, then you should be making more money at this point. But I think allowing yourself to be humble and not actually and actually know that you aren't really up to speed yet, and we as leaders should recognize that too. It's like we should give them that affirmation. We should say, hey, you're learning, I'm teaching, we're figuring this out together. Let's not pretend. I want to make sure you're successful. Do you have any questions? Let's make sure we get that out of the way and feel good about asking me questions, because you may think if you ask a question in some cultures, that's a sign of I don't know anything, right? And I'm afraid to ask a question because I might be deemed, well, this guy doesn't know anything, right?
Yeah, not in UX, right?
Yeah.
You better be asking the questions.
Absolutely.
And good questions earn respect.
Absolutely. Yeah. Similarly, my boys in baseball, and the coach it's funny because they don't come over to him and say, no, you're doing it wrong right away. They almost kind of want them to come to them and recognize they're not doing it wrong. Instead of doing it 3 times in a row wrong, how about you come up to the coach and it creates that confidence where, hey, I'm not getting this, right? That should be a good trait for somebody that's in this world. I'm not sure what this person does. Let's figure that out. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's a lot to ask for a kid.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
But that would be very impressive.
Yeah. But you don't get adults to do that either. So It's like,
Yeah. I think that's something that I've learned and I'm still learning and relearning is when, I'm given a task and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. And then I come back and I'm like, here it is. And then the person's like, this isn't exactly what I was looking for. So I'm realizing that my image in my head doesn't exactly match the person who, gave me the task. And so for me, it's not so much like I'm worried about being humble because I feel like I have enough humility. But for me, it's like taking up the space to say, I don't want to take up that person's time too much, right? So if they said something and they didn't give me anything else, that must be enough information. But your strategy of saying, what are your questions? I think that's a really good opportunity to be like, oh, yes, I do have the opportunity to ask questions.
You leave it open. It's not a directive and go and like, all right, go figure it out, right? It's not. It shouldn't be that way anyway. Like I think a good leader will open that door. Open door policy, right?
Yeah.
Well, show me, right? Give me that ability, or give me the open door that I can feel good about asking you a question. Maybe that's us as leaders, and maybe that's us leaders out there too. That we're all learning. We can learn from younger people just as much as they can learn from us. So.
For sure.
So how can they stand out in a competitive job market? There's going to be thousands, maybe millions if you count the whole world, right? Of all these people doing this great job. And as you can see today, there's a lot out there and they're all asking. And how do you differentiate yourself from the next new person that doesn't have much on their resume neither, right? Like it's like a sea of resumes that have literally nothing on it except for school experience, right? You have proof. You need to show proof. How do you show proof that you're the one over the other person next to you? Why should I hire you?
Right. What comes to mind?
I'm trying to think of unique ways to do this because I think people have worked to stand out in terms of their design and just creating really eye-catching designs, but then now it seems like everyone can do that, right? And then, going on LinkedIn and posting, here's what I learned, here's my opinion on it. That's great sometimes, but then sometimes coming from a less tenured person, that could look bad potentially, unless it's, really great insights. One thing that I like that I see is people posting their research or their case studies. So not necessarily like their whole portfolio, but they're like a little deep dive into, hey, I learned a ton about this. This is what my insight is. Here's my case study and here's what I created. Just like a little snippet of a portfolio. And then that and also like any references you have or any connections and seeing if you can kind of get into different circles is what I would suggest.
Hold that one because I definitely want to talk about that. But portfolios, right? So, I mean, that is kind of the ticket, the first place you have to stand out often. When that position goes out and the hiring manager's looking, they're browsing through and not very long at each one before they find the one that I'm going to spend a little more time on. And now what made it stand out? I mean, you got to show your designs and there's a lot of opportunities and we know a good design when we see it, yes, but what stands out to me is one, the way that they're able to talk about the process and not too much, but not too little. I don't want to read and I won't read, an infinite scroll about all the steps and all the things, but I do want to see that you understand each step, why you did it, what you learned. And the one thing I see missing most often in portfolio reviews, which I'll do some things through ASU again and senior projects and capstone stuff, when they're going through the portfolios, often when they get to the what I learned, they talk about what I learned as a student. Like, this design skill, this research skill. I want to know, right? Because I'm hiring you for my business, for an objective here. Like, what did you learn about the customer? What did you learn in the process that changed the outcome for the better for what the business was trying to achieve? Like, people that can start to talk about that in their portfolio, to me, that's the kind of thinking I feel like they're a little bit ahead of the pack.
Absolutely. What makes you really excited about what you learned about that person? Something that's like, oh, I never knew that. Wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. exactly why we do user research, because you wouldn't have thought of that if you didn't listen to them. And that's, I think, you can go pretty far with the proto persona, but like to really understand a real person and how they react to things is good.
Well, we're designers, right? So what do we geek out on? Design,
Yeah.
right? When we get together and we're going to hang out, and have a drink and tell stories, like we tell our amazing stories. There's one time in this user test where there's a product page with a purchase button, and I watch person after person get to that page and not click it. And they're looking around the page, what are they doing? We changed the name to add to order. All of a sudden they're clicking it. What? Why did that work? But instead, it's amazing user psychology of why. What we found out is that they thought purchase literally mean you're going to charge my card. I'm not ready for that yet. Add to order, it's safe. I can take that action and I can proceed,
Yeah. Well, heuristically, it's giving you the exact thing that button's supposed to do, right? Go to, order,
proceed.
add to the order.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if in your portfolio, I'm seeing these kind of things and like you helped this website convert better because we learned this is what people were thinking. Purchase was too immediate, not ready. Add to order, move them forward at the right pace to make that decision at the right time. If you're telling me that, I love you.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk more. Yeah. And now I'm not just looking at your portfolio, I'm reaching out. Right?
Yeah, and I think there's certain creativities that I would love to see, even if maybe, because let's take that example. Ordering has been done 100,000 times, right? However, if you were like somebody that's really like a little bit creative and going, maybe there's a better way to do this. Of course, it's been thought of 100,000 times, but if you came up with some really interesting thing that I would never develop, I don't know. I feel like I would give you some props on that because you're trying to do something different. And I think that's where invention starts becoming less innovation. It's more invention. And you're inventing a new way of how you could interact with this. And that takes a special person. Yeah. That person I might hire immediately just because of that,
I agree. Yeah, I think that's the other thing, because you're not hiring just to do more of what you're already doing today. You want to add something new, right, to the repertoire.
Yeah, like you have that ability to feel pretty confident in breaking this, right? Yeah. To other people, it might be breaking it.
Well, all right. So on the standing out thing, right? What can you do? Because there's a lot of portfolios, a lot of good design. People now have more end-to-end in their portfolio than they used to, so you can kind of see that they've got a breadth of skills. But you mentioned networking, getting out there. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, before we move on, I think you touched on a really great, like the aha moment, and it kind of brings a sense of like humility or humanness to it. And I think that might be important. It's not just like, here's my process, this is what I did, this is what I found out, but all of a sudden like the whole what is it, like cinematic of like rise and fall and I'm talking
and
about
storytelling, right? Rising action and then
climax. And
so I almost like love the aha moment, like this is what I discovered. And also I think there's something to be said for this is what I found out was wrong. Like this is my assumption and I was wrong. And I think there's a lot of I think there's something really positive about saying like, this is what I was thinking initially. And I went out and did some user research and, I was totally wrong. And here's what I'm going to do instead. That's what I would be really eager to work with someone who was had a lot of humility like that. And to see that on a portfolio, I think would be really unique and cool. And then going out and, going to your point about references and networking, I think maybe getting some people on your portfolio to give like testimonials to say like, I worked with this person and just give you some more of like a robust reference gives your portfolio more oomph.
So how do young people think about networking, right? So being Matt in our era, we met at like a UX and AZ and IXDA World Usability Day. This is in-person events, walking up, shaking hands. What do you do? Talking to people. It was more in-person networking. Of course, with social and with all the things that are going on. Do you guys still think of old-fashioned ways you got to get out and meet people, or is it kind of connecting online, bit of both? How do you think about that?
I'd say a little bit of both. I think I'm a grandma in like a young person's body. I love the I love the in-person networking. I would much rather meet in person than not. I think my personality does not necessarily come across like a Zoom screen or social media. Even when I met with you the first time and you offered to meet on Zoom, I was like, that does not do anything for me. I'm so sorry.
Sorry. I didn't want to get your COVID.
So yeah, I think there's still something to be said to like going out and meeting someone in person. I don't think you can compete with that on social media.
I know that I was inspired by meeting other designers who were doing stuff. I just hearing their stories, you know, like, so I would reach out here and there to people. I'm just like, I really like your stuff. How did you get doing this? People like to talk about themselves. So that's usually a good ticket in.
Guilty.
But the other thing we said about being active, that being out there sometimes means I've been job seeking for 2 months. You know, I've had a few interviews. I haven't landed it yet. What am I doing with my time? On the inventive side, is there a local business website? Is there a friend of yours who has a business idea? Like, invent a project, do some things. You'd be surprised. The friend's mom works at GoDaddy and saw this thing you did and said, you should talk to so-and-so, and all of a sudden opportunity appears, right?
There are millions of opportunities to solve out there. You just have to be willing to go and get them and find them, and be able to maybe not charge for them. Maybe you have to do that for a while, just to get your portfolio up and running. A lot of small businesses, a lot of mom and pops have problems. Those are really easy to go identify and apply your skills to them. And guess what? You just helped somebody. You just helped a mom and pop get through something that they probably would have failed and maybe closed. We need more mom and pops out there than we do less. So, it'd be huge if everybody was almost like required to go help somebody for free, pro bono. Go find your favorite pizza place and see if they need any help with anything they need, right? And you can figure that out. So use your skills to apply to those problems.
I know several people who made Instagram accounts for their pets and built from there, right?
That's awesome.
The website, the merchandise, and next thing you know, they've got a pet celebrity on their hands.
It's crazy.
But, whatever inspires you. The mom and pop, Fido, like whatever it's going to be.
Exactly.
Be creative. Show that's why you're a designer first and foremost. Yes, you need a career, but you're inspired to create. You're inspired to think through and solve problems and do things. Like, don't wait.
That's awesome. No, maybe I should do one for my cat. He has like a crooked head. We can call it Crooked Head Cat.
That's perfect.
I love it. I think you got the name.
Everywhere.
Don't take that. I'm going to do it. So this next question is actually, maybe it doesn't apply to us. It might. I don't know the history of way back where you came from, but transitioning to the user experience roles. Right? You're somebody else right now. You have a different role. You're a teacher, maybe. You're a speech therapist, maybe.
That'd be strange.
Right?
Very specific. Now, and, maybe you took on a lot of different jobs. Maybe things that you just weren't into, and now you're kind of like learning about user experience, and you're learning about product design, and you're learning about strategy, things like that. And you kind of into it, but maybe you don't even know you're into it, right? You've never, maybe you're on the opposite side where you've never even heard of this kind of a role. But however you get there, where do you think, how are those professionals different? What do they do that can apply to user experience roles? Maybe tell your story about
do you have a
speech
story there, maybe?
I have a little bit of a story. So I was a speech language pathology assistant, graduated from ASU, and started my own clinic. And in doing that, I created our own website, and really focused on the UX of the website and then the UX of the physical office. And we were being hypercritical with everything. We had the whole year of COVID to plan out this launch. And so we were highly perfectionistic, thinking of everything, doing wireframes and, site maps and doing competitive analyses. And I didn't know those existed. I didn't know about user experience. I didn't know about web development. I didn't know anything. And so we launched our clinic, and it just didn't end up working out. The clinic is amazing, still in business, but the partnership didn't work out. And so then I'm, mid-20s, wondering, unemployed, wondering, I could do anything. What could I do? And the thing I was really missing was the web design. And so I was like, if only that was a career. This is it for me.
Well, you caught it at the tail end.
Yeah.
For the most part. No,
right. And so I actually stumbled upon the Google UX Coursera certificate.
Yep.
And I was like, this is a career. Yeah. News to me. And so I was like, this is what I should be doing. And I was so excited to find it. And then I went through the courses and I was like, a competitive analysis is a thing. And a wireframe is a thing. And all of these things that I just knew that should go into it, like intuitively, they teach these things. And so I learned them more formally. And so that was very exciting for me because I felt like I discovered something new about myself, even though I was already doing it. So I think in terms of career switching, it was technically like a role shift for me in terms of the name of my career, but honestly, I feel like I was doing it before. So I think the career shifters just maybe need to frame it like that, is that I'm not necessarily shifting my career. I'm just going into something that lets me do this more seriously or more intensely than just, an ancillary part of a different job.
Well, especially if you if you attribute UI and UX, right? Obviously, why would you're coming out of a speech therapist program and you're like, I don't know how to do UI, right? But you just named off like 3 or 4 things that we would do,
Yep.
right? And by the way, you didn't do it for a UI. That's
right.
If UIs went away, those things worked, or at least you used them to better the experience of your practice, right?
Right.
That's pretty amazing.
When I think about transitioning, I think about my story, and I think of Alan Basha, who you had on not too long ago on this podcast. I'll talk about Alan first. I was in design at that point. I'd kind of reached my goal of doing that professionally, and was in a team at a company here in Scottsdale. Alan was QA at the time. And that's, I think once you're in an org, you get exposure to lots of different roles, right? It's a team sport. One, what teams are having the most fun, right? Which ones seem to be having fun, enjoying what they do. And, he saw us over there. But then 2, who can do something, like if you really care about your work, like who can do something about it? He, as a QA guy, was in user experience. He's looking at the quality and how these things perform, and he would see certain things that were happening in our software. Like, why are we doing this way? This doesn't work. This is not just producing errors, but this isn't how I think it should be. Let me go talk to those designers. So when you have a little bit of a passion around something, that's another thing. I mean, you had a passion too, and in his case, what applied was, I'm also looking at the experience and seeing these things, and I'm not satisfied any longer doing it from this vantage point. Yeah. I want to change that experience. How do I start to work on that?
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, if you're a builder and you're a person that likes to build things, I came from the Navy, which doesn't have any process at all. No, no, everything is wrapped around process, especially the amount of use or amount of maybe user experience. I don't know if they would call it that, but like process analysis within the military is everything has a purpose. And you got to learn that, why am I doing this? Somebody thought of it. Somebody wants you to do it. It's specific to exactly what they need you to do. You don't have to think much. Now, I was also a CB, so I was more in the construction kind of area. And I've always enjoyed building things, using my hands, putting it together, building something for somebody, for a purpose. I did do 1 year of school before I went in the military, and I mainly did fine arts or some sort of drawing or painting things. But I think if you are a person that enjoys creating things, I think it's a good career for you to be in. You've also, if you can apply a builder's type of mentality that you have to plan for something, you have to measure things, you have to kind of prototype it, and you can't just start hammering a nail and expect it to work. You need to, really understand the space and understand what you want to do with it. There's a purpose to what I'm trying to build. Just as much as anything that we're building in software, there's supposed to be a purpose. Now, back in the day when you create a band website or something,
right,
you can go crazy, but the purpose is to engage the person to buy your music or to listen to your music. So there's still a purpose for even that. Finding your purpose, applying that, and working towards it. I think anybody can be any kind of role anywhere else in the world. They will automatically go, I can't draw. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Right. That's not a requirement.
I think the construction's a good connection to it. A builder, a creative thinker in that way. But part of what we have to remember is, user experience, ultimately, all the things we're doing in digital are things we do in real life.
Absolutely.
It's always connected. So whatever your background is, speech therapy or whatever it's going to be, there is an application. Yep. Somewhere out there is software design, something looking to do it better, more efficiently, or more broadly reach more people through that medium, right? So I think it's all these experiences can come to bear.
I love it. Yeah. So don't give up.
Yes.
Is what we're saying. Don't think you're out of it and it's too late. It's not too late to empathize with a human being. You can do it tomorrow if you want to.
Oh, definitely.
Next question. Beyond technical skills like research, design, strategy, what are the soft skills essential for the success of product strategy and UX? I think we touched on it a little bit, but I think we can go into a little bit more.
I think about you actually, and meeting you at one of the UX meetups. One of the first things is putting yourself out there. Yeah. That's so important. Yeah. And it's not easy. That's not easy for a lot of people. There's
scary.
Just as many introverts in UX as there are extroverts or somewhere in between. Yep. But that is a skill. Ultimately, you need to be out there. It's part of the job, as we said before, to talk to people. It's part of the job to be a good, active listener, right? And demonstrating that and practicing that is like the first step.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
you do a lot of public speaking?
Oh, gosh, no.
You're doing well on this.
Thank you. It's just you guys, right?
It's just us, yeah.
But I do think I'm an introvert. But I think just meeting you at that UX meet and just saying, hearing that you had a problem, and I was like, oh, he has a problem. He needs a portfolio, and just kind of honing into that and kind of asking more questions and active listening, but also being a good communicator, I think is helpful in terms of finding those opportunities, but also maintaining them too. I think for soft skills, communication has probably been the biggest in the career, because you can be a great UX researcher, but then you have to communicate your insights. You can be a great UX designer, but then you have to communicate why you did what you did. So communication, how you deliver, and also taking into account who you're delivering to, because not everyone wants to hear everything.
That's a really good call out, yes.
Something I'm still learning.
Self-editing is difficult, but that's a good call out.
I think one thing that people could do, and more tactically do it, is take a class of public speaking. It really breaks you out. You're forced to do it. Unfortunately, they force you to do it. But, you'll learn the different ways of how to speak to, because it's not just lecturing. there's persuasive speech and all those other categories of what you have to do. And I think a lot of times we do end up doing a lot of persuasive speaking to people, either in person or on stage, and I think it really gets you in that mindset of getting out of the fear of it, and really articulating better, to masses of people. And I think there's some advantages to that one, not just because you're an introvert. It's just you have something to say, and you should be saying it, especially if it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, we have our ideas. We want to get them implemented.
Yeah.
You have to be able to be persuasive in that. There's going to be a lot of big personalities in that room who have probably a bigger microphone than you do, or at least bigger stage. And so to be able to talk, to be able to handle yourself in a group, get things heard, definitely.
Yeah. If you can get over the fact that you think nobody cares about what you say, which isn't true, should be not true. I think that's when you win. That's when you start being heard, is that you're not afraid to say something and give your opinion, because everybody has an opinion, right? And may not be as informed as somebody that's been through it, but at least it sparks a conversation of, I have been through that. What you said was, it may be true or may not be. I'm going to, but you should be able to handle that and feel good about learning, and feel good about maybe you said something that I'm like, oh, I never knew that, right? But if you never said it, I wouldn't know. And so it's just got to put yourself out there, I think. I know it's scary.
Yeah, but maybe there's some ego in that, like, of being anxious and being in front of people and public speaking, because maybe you do have something important to share, and you being anxious isn't a good enough reason to not share it. This is something I learned in speech therapy, actually, is just not, like, having no shame, basically, of, like, you have a goal. You can't let your, like, being embarrassed or having anxiety really prevent that. For example, when I first started in speech therapy, I was on the floor with 2-year-olds who weren't speaking, and then their parents are in on the session. And my job is to, magically get this 2-year-old to start talking. And you're not necessarily sitting, up at a table saying, like, here, what is this a picture of, right? You're on the floor with a 2-year-old. And so the first thing a 2-year-old normally learns is environmental sounds. And so you're making farm animal sounds and you're singing in front of these parents. And so, you have to break out your best, goat sound. And it's not something you necessarily...
Will we get to hear that today?
I don't even know what a goat sounds like.
Someone look up the Taylor Swift video.
That's a goat sound.
So it's like, I do get goats and sheep mixed up. Maybe I'm thinking of sheep, like that, And so when you're on the floor with a 2-year-old and you're singing, like, these songs, and these parents are like, this is kind of weird. But if you don't feel weird about it, they don't feel weird about it. And so you just do it.
Right.
And so I think that
they're probably like, trust the process.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they're doing, but it's like some weird Jedi stuff.
Is this normal?
If you believe in yourself, you're going to get people believe in you, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, if it looks normal, looks like she knows what she's doing, okay, she's the therapist.
Right, yeah.
Same with the designer, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So if you're pitching your designs and you have some sort of hesitation towards it, I think people are also going to have some hesitation towards you. So you just have to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it.
Well, and designers face a lot of I think. And that's where we're equipped a little better in those conversations, right? Because so many times on these project teams, this project manager thinks this and the engineer thinks that. And, well, what did the user say? What did the research say? What do we learn when we actually, observed? We have evidence.
Yeah.
And
the less sentimental evidence, probably a little easier to prove, or to influence somebody's decision, when you're sitting there with a big number in front of you and not just, I think this is hard and everybody said it was. Still, I don't know how much value that is to anybody, or waste. Is that wasteful? Is it not? I'm not sure, because I don't really have any hard empirical type numbers in front of me.
So on the soft skills, right?
Yep.
We're putting yourself out there, communicating, being persuasive, speaking. I don't know if this is a soft skill or a hard skill, but planning. One thing that people might overlook and that people might have as a talent that they don't realize is to be able to take a scenario and put a plan to paper and
Right.
start executing. Nobody on the team is going to tell you how to go do your
Right.
design. You've got to remember your training, like the different types of research, the prototyping, like there's different methods, creative sessions, design thinking, like when do you need to ideate? After you're listening, after you're understanding, putting a plan together that's going to fit the time frame and producing a great result that does have that evidence we're talking about, that's been tested, that's going to have the best shot at success, and then learn. Planning is pretty important, and another thing I don't see all the time on teams.
I agree. I'm notorious for not doing that. No, but it's like, because if you're working by yourself, it's always in your head, and like, why do I need to write it down for anyone? It's in my head. But then that's an excuse for you to change it halfway through, and now you're screwed up because you didn't have the original hypothesis in front of you, and now you're kind of changing the hypothesis, but then nobody really knew you did that. And now at the end of the day, I win every time, right? Like, but it's like, if you can, I think it's good steward of people's attention and time to put it down on paper, to make sure you have a good thing that you're trying to do, hypothesis of some, however you want to write it, and you show your work in doing so. I've been better at that since I've been working at Neudesic. Thank you. Thankfully, it took 15 years to get to that point. But if you have a structure, and that structure helps get it down on paper. Miro helps get it on boards. Tools help that, but it's really you being able to put it on paper. Thankfully, I planned this whole thing. I did some things, right?
You did some planning.
I was going to go and say, let's just talk about stuff, and wherever it goes, it goes. Well, guess what? I've done a couple podcasts in the past, and I'm like, I can't edit this because I don't know where anything is, right? You're talking about this 1 second, literally a second, and then it goes into something else, right? So it actually, the planning, or poor planning, hurt my editing because I couldn't figure out how to edit it. There was no logical breaks in the conversation. So I know now I need logical breaks in the conversation so I can put up the nice little questionnaire or something on it and have a good transition into the next question. So it just, and that's for podcasts. It has no UI. That's nothing.
But
that's
you're designing.
It's designing the conversation of which we're doing literally right now.
Does any of that hit on, you were talking about experience design, kind of the new degree you're pursuing.
Yeah.
Does any of this kind of connect there when you talk about designing experiences?
Oh, all of it. Yeah, it's the same, especially planning. Right now I'm currently planning out my applied project and kind of starting backwards before graduation date and then defense and then planning everything from that. And I think planning kind of goes along with documentation and kind of capturing what your plan is, what your thoughts are, because I think thoughts are just fleeting, and then, you lose them. And so if you don't capture them somewhere, what are they really worth, in my opinion? Is that a hot take?
I think so. I like that.
You have to capture it somewhere, whether it's, on a journal, on a Miro. I've been using Notion a lot. And so I've actually been incorporating this into my meetings when I'm meeting with someone. And I think this could be a good user research tool or a stakeholder tool, or just when you're meeting with anyone, I actually share my screen, my note screen, and I make sure I write down their feedback so that they feel validated that she heard me, she understands what I'm saying, and then she's also going to put it to use.
That's great.
That's been very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess to lessons learned from our experience is that the more prepared you are, the more smooth it's going to be. I had a company commander in boot camp say that the cleaner starting product is going to be the most successful product and I think he meant let you have a plan, you know how to execute the plan, it's going to be good after that. I think if you go in messy, you're going to get messy. So at that point, that might be a good transition.
Sounds good.
So the role of AI and UX, the dreaded AI and UX, what do you think about that?
We're figuring it out, aren't we? Like
Yep.
that's
On
our
the
job
fly.
now. The first thing that comes to mind is creativity. The one thing it's been really good at is it's being that partner with you in ideas, right?
Yeah.
And if you are ever stuck, giving you some thought starters. I've been hesitant in the way I apply it. I'm trying to be very kind of thoughtful and pragmatic. I don't want it to come first necessarily. Yeah. That's been one rule. I don't know if you guys have developed more rules or in your approach, or
I'm not sure if I went so far as it doesn't come first or second. I think my prompts is always going to be first. My idea of what I want to ask and how I want to construct that prompt, that's becoming the design right now. It's like, how do you really ask it a question that's useful? And I think the idea comes from the human being. It gets help from a robot to come back with something useful, and then you keep doing it.
I have,
unless you think that we have to try to come up with a solution and then say, is this valid?
That's the thing is, we've built careers.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have been doing this a long time. There's a way that Tony's brain works on the problem that has always added a value that's unique and that can build from.
That's true.
I found myself with AI in the danger spot where if I put it through that first, well, let's just go with that.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're always okay. So that's self-control, right? So your self-control is not so good. No, I totally agree with you. You get in that habit,
or
and
I'm biased by it,
and you see it in an email. It's like, oh, it's there. I was just griping about that today. I was like, is this guy always sending me stuff from ChatGPT? Like every time I ask him a question in normal language, it comes back like even bolded in some areas. I'm like, oh, come on, guys.
So how often are you using it daily? Use it multiple times a day? Weekly?
I'll never use it to communicate.
How often are you using AI just in general though?
I like to get research from places that I can't actually access. Like if I go ask a question about market research and I don't have a Gartner account, well, maybe somewhere out there it will sift it because somebody shared it, right? And somehow it's out there, and then I have to see if it's real. But I usually ask for sources when I do that.
I think most people know, but just in case some of the people looking at or listening to this don't, there's a lag in the data in ChatGPT.
Absolutely.
Right? So things in the last 6 months, last year, not going to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty important.
It is important.
But historically, it's like, tell me about tax preparers and what kind of tools they use in their business. There's enough information.
The logging industry. I'm pretty sure they haven't changed the logging industry too much.
Maybe. Are you using AI in your studies? Are you allowed to talk about that?
It's confidential. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm using it a few times a week. I use ChatGPT to. Recently, I've put in a journey of a user, and then I ask it to validate. But it's been extremely specialized information. So it hasn't been incredibly useful, but it's given me enough information to say, is that true? Mm-hmm. And then I go find out if that's true.
I like getting the roles of the process from it. It's like, tell me all the people that would be involved in oil and gas, maybe even downstream oil and gas, right? Because I don't know the roles, right? And I can't even begin to come up with the schedule of interviewing if I don't really understand how it all gets into play. Now I could just stop at the roles and I'll go ask the roles and we map it out with them with the roles, or I can maybe get a head start on it and say, okay, logic and typically the process of downstream oil and gas is you get it from the thing and you go to the pump, or whatever.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a good use.
Yeah, just to give you a little bit of head start. At least you come into the room and you kind of know a little bit, and then they can say that's not true or that is true. I'm not even going to hide the fact where I got this, right? I just wanted something at the table to talk about, and you're the one that's going to say that's the book way, but technically we have a little bit of nuance there.
Yeah. I like it. Also, process and frameworks
Yeah.
similar in a way. So, like, we were evolving our user acceptance testing around UX, and there's a lot of knowledge on the team, a lot of experience. We kind of wrote our stuff out, and then let's see what ChatGPT says, and are there
Now you're
things to
comparing.
compare? Yeah,
Right? Yeah,
that's a
like
good way.
interesting. We're either right on it or we're not. Right.
Yep.
That's a good feeling when you're right on it.
Yep. Thought of that.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. What do we think about that? We don't. Okay, good. Let's move
Now,
on.
have you designed? All right. What about using DALL-E, like making images?
I absolutely hate Dolly.
Terrible.
It's the worst. Any of those image creating things are annoying and useless of my time. Most of the time, I'm much more successful about just going to Envato and like finding the image I really want.
I'm glad you said that. Like right now, there's enough places to browse and to find images that, especially with experience, you can probably get what you want pretty quickly.
That have 5 fingers.
Yeah, you're not missing any limbs or extra
Weird, like the finger go through the face. I'm like, what is going on here?
I was playing around with the thing around logos, and I gave it the exact text, like this is the business name, Scottsdale, Arizona. Here are the elements, and it put 3 A's in Scottsdale or whatever. And there's no A in there.
I don't understand that either.
Or whatever.
This is a basic font type of thing. Yeah. It's a character that's been as old as what characters are developed.
And
right?
then it put some random numbers and a seal. I'm like, what did these 901 303? What the heck is that? But then I realized too. I can look at it, and it's probably not fair to say it's terrible. It does some goofy things. Like you cannot use it as is. But when I looked at the overall design, it absolutely
inspired you.
Gave me a creative direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I can take that I wouldn't have thought of that right away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's inspiring, but then you have to do the work.
Yes.
You better know how to do Illustrator and that thing.
Definitely.
And,
but we know it's going to be evolving. I mean, it's in its infancy, in a year, in a couple of years.
I think if you're emulating photography and you're able to prompt it in a way that you're, maybe a camera geek like myself, I'm able to give it the lens. I've give it the, the bokeh, what kind of f-stop I'm sitting at, and things like that is pretty interesting. The problem is all the people look blah.
What do you call it? There's this airbrushed
Uncanny
quality or
valley.
something. Like when the people images, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't look it's not a real human being.
Usually, but there are some I wouldn't know.
Really?
Yeah. Especially if you prompt it in a way that you're using, let's say you can even say I'm going to use 55 or 5500 Kelvin, on the lighting, or I want it lit this certain way, and it starts becoming, you see detail pores, you see stuff. It's pretty scary when you get into, especially a portrait. That is easy for that to do that. The problem is the portrait is, I've seen that person before. It's not very creative on the uniqueness of human beings. It's and Danny always made fun of it because it only just shows hot people.
Yeah.
So it's there's never an ugly person coming in. Even when you say, I want this person really, really, really ugly, it's a model, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't understand ugly. Whatever that means. And that's good, right? We should never.
But I guess back to AI practical applications. Is there a lot of that? Because you're kind of in an emerging area of experience design that you're studying?
Yeah, there's some of it. We did an art installation at the end of last semester, and I tested out Runway AI for like text to video, and that gave some really scary things at first, and so I had to kind of tweak it a little bit to make it create something that wasn't very off-putting to people. I wanted
I'm so curious to ask what that is.
I wanted cats in stained glass, and I wanted it to move. And when it was doing it, it was blurring the cats' heads. It was terrible.
Oh my gosh.
But then it just, I ended up actually just using an image of cats in stained glass and then putting it into Touch Designer and animating it that way.
Yeah.
So it has some
Did it write back saying,
improvement
"You're a
opportunity.
psycho, I'm not doing that"?
It should have.
You want to put cats in a box? What are you doing? Well, you just throw it out in the road.
It was very clutch though, where you're in a pinch and you just need something that's viable.
A little piece of content
Yeah.
for your video, right? You just need something that articulates what I'm saying, and it's just 2 seconds long, and you're good to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see that a lot in my favorite podcast, or it's not really a podcast. It's more like one of those informational YouTube shows. It's called Y Files, and he'll put stuff as he's speaking about it, and they create the tall white character, the alien or something, and it's like, it generates a perfect alien. It doesn't have to be real, right? Like, it's a perfect alien for this, what he's talking about. And I guarantee most of the stuff on that is generated because you wouldn't be able to create all that stuff.
There was one application, so communications it absolutely can help with, right?
Yeah.
Get your rough content in and then have it refine or write or do things. Remember one case, a researcher had done this brief and delivered it to the stakeholder who said it was great, way too academic. I need this written for a 7-year-old. Now imagine going back as that researcher, how long would it take to rewrite this? What do they mean for a 7-year-old? But she put it in ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Out it came, and it was basically there. Like
Yeah.
just there's like a YouTube series like where you explain a topic as a 5-year-old, as a college person.
Oh, interesting.
Right. I don't know if you've seen this, but like
We'll
something.
put the link below.
I'll have to find it. There you go. I'll have to find it. But they'll take a topic like physics, and they'll have like an elementary school kid, high school, a
that's
college, and then like somebody who's
hilarious.
in the field, like
I want to see this.
professional. Yeah,
You got to get the link. We'll put it up.
I'll find it. But yeah, that's one thing I think that can be really helpful is tailoring
Yeah.
for different audiences.
Going on the kid thing, as you know, math is different for them than it was for us. And frankly, it doesn't matter if it was different or not. It's hard to teach a kid math, and especially when you're getting at algebra and things like that, which I haven't used in 100 years. And then I'm thinking, how do I explain this to you? Because I kind of know the answer without doing all the things I know the teacher wants you to do. I've oftentimes gone in ChatGPT. I say, hey, here's the problem. How do I explain this to the kid? And it does a really good job articulating what I need to say for him to understand that, and it does kind of get me out of jail free card a little bit.
All right, because I said we might be getting towards the end of the AI topic, but I have to say GoDaddy Arrow. Okay.
GoDaddy Arrow.
That's our new AI website builder.
Okay.
You might have seen something about it at the Super Bowl with our
Link
commercial.
below.
Yes, but so I'm sure there'll be lots of opinions. There always is on the kind of design tools. But I had a family golf outings. It was just me and my brother-in-law, and we had 2 teams last fall that were going to go head-to-head just for fun, a family kind of competition thing up in Michigan. And it was kind of convenient because I wanted to test out Arrow. This is, kind of early versions. And I want to see how it do building a website for my golf outing. And as somebody who has built from scratch, I mean, literally hand-coded and done everything up through, okay, now we've got actually design tools. I'm thinking, okay, a little bit of skeptic, let's give it a shot. I asked it, he asked me a few questions. I kind of put what I was doing. And I would say I was actually very impressed. It was all the things that you do foundationally to set up a website were done.
Yeah.
And it's seeded images, with that golf theme, with that Northern Michigan theme. It's seeded content. And so, it's 75% there.
Yeah.
All I had to do was customize
How's the CSS and the HTML?
sound. Sound. Yeah, because that's baked in.
Yeah.
So it's optimized. In fact,
now that's probably pretty easy.
Yeah.
Back in the day. Can you remember front page? Oh my God.
I remember that.
The output on that was I have to do more to cleaning this up than I bother with it.
That's the thing. So I think, I definitely see where, from a construction standpoint, a starting point, that it's going to get us so much faster to the parts where we really start to apply what are the fun parts of design anyways. Let's get the custom.
Well, that's my point when I said you kind of got into the web design at the tail end, because you're going to get into this. Almost accelerates you right to the thing. But you still need to understand what you want to say. It's still about the content. The website is just the vessel of which the content sits. Yeah. And you still need, I think, that intent, with it.
That's where the designer expertise comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to try it.
It's interesting.
Did you say that you're going to give discounts to all the people at UX and AZ?
Well, there's a good free deal, I think, right now to get started.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Free deal.
Go check it out.
But only for UX and AZ people.
Yeah. That's it. Maybe a few others.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But there's,
right,
I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in technology, content, social posts and marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's going to be more and more people are using it already, right?
Yeah, that's great. All right, we're on to maybe the last question. Boo-hoo. So we're going to talk about career growth and leadership. So once someone gets their first role in product strategy or UX, what are the key steps to their growth in their career? Obviously, they achieve the ultimate goal of getting the job. Somebody's trusted them enough. They'd said all the right things to get them in there. And then they leave. No, it's joking. I'm just joking.
I actually am curious, though, Marisa, like coming in and looking at an org, right? Mm-hmm. And leadership and thinking about, okay, I'm just starting here. What does leadership look like? Is there what is your desire? What is your motivation around that? How do you start to think about developing, or where does it begin?
Don't say my leadership.
Without getting yourself in trouble here.
She doesn't work for me anymore. She's dead to me.
Oh, gosh.
Just joking.
Yeah, I think that leadership coming in just looks like leading by doing initially, leading by example, and showing people that you said you were going to do this, so you do it. Just being very consistent and showing that you can do the job, and then just doing that really well. And then you can figure out what things you're going to add. Maybe you're adding, some mentorship for this person here. Maybe you're adding, this person really needs help with ideating today. Like, let me go over, and sit with them for a bit and seeing if I can help them. But not, forgetting your job of why you came in, making sure, your cup is full before going to fill others, but definitely make sure that you're seeing if other cups are needing to be filled too.
Really good answer. Glad I asked you first.
I wish you did that when you were here. No, so you must have learned. No, I think that's right on. And, I always have like a U+2 kind of mentality. Now, I do recognize that when a person comes in, there's literally, frankly, scared shitless, not doing anything wrong. So now they're like really tight on like trying to like actually give advice, right? Because they don't really have a lot of advice to give, but they have, they observe, this and that. And I think we talked about it in the beginning of this. But, as you're growing, I think having the can-do attitude around things to a point where you're not going to be disruptive, but like when things are asked of you, obviously ask, what does that mean? How can I do that? Where can I research it? How can I get up to speed on it? Having that yes I think I can do that first. Not I know I can do that, but I think I can do that first versus, oh, I didn't learn that in school. I can't do that, right? Like I don't want a no sayer, right? But I also don't want to like a blindly yes sayer either. You know, I don't want you to go off and get in trouble with what I just asked you to do. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
It
Probably
does.
doesn't.
No, I get it.
That sounded stupid.
With leadership, I think of knowing yourself first. So there's leadership in terms of becoming a leader of your craft, really, really good at what you do and helping the others around you who do that craft up level and enjoy it and being available to people. And then there's leaders of people.
Yeah.
And that's a special skill itself. Sometimes you have both. Often it's a different path. I've talked to a lot of designers who have no interest in being people leaders, just want to do their design. Sure. That's what they love. But then some people find that spark in leading teams and they find out that this is what they were meant to do,
Yeah.
And then thought leadership, right? And that's a big one where you're going to, again, not just be stuck to kind of this is what we do today, this is the job, this is the project, but what are those other things, right? And bringing in
inspiring, influencing type activities where I'm looking at 30,000 feet, 50,000 feet down the road, and you guys are doing your job. It's awesome. But how do we get way over there eventually? That's hard. And it's hard for a leader like that to even feel comfortable about taking a fleet of people down a long, very dark road,
It is.
Without a lot of light around it.
But there's different ways to show leadership.
Absolutely.
And you can kind of find your path. But I love how simple you made it in the beginning. Actually, I'm going to remember that about, doing what you say you're going to do, being available to people, leading by example,
As soon as you say yes and you don't do it,
Yeah.
Do that a couple of times, and then people will stop asking you to do stuff, and that's the kiss of death at that point. Like, I feel like if people aren't really asking you to help, and obviously if you're not putting yourself out there, right? If you're waiting around, then they're kind of like, that might mean that you're not as valuable as you thought you were, and you better up your game. You better get involved. Don't sit there anymore. Be more proactive than reactive. I think I want to trust everybody coming right in. It'll take a lot for them to burn me. But if they do it too many times, then it's just, I have to move on to another person that is going to help us move forward. That's the reality of it. This job that you sought and won is not necessarily, how would I say that? A privilege, or, like you were able to win it because of the things you have said. You don't have to keep it. I don't have to keep giving it to you, at that point. So just be wary of that. It's a hard truth. It's like, just because you got it doesn't mean you're going to be here forever. And, but I don't want that to happen. And as a leader, I'm going to recognize that it's going down that road, and I got to stop it, because it's my fault as a leader if you go down that road too far. Like, I should be able to recognize it. A leader should be able to recognize where people are floating away. And I'm not sure I'll do everything I can to steer you back, right? Guardrails and stuff like that.
With your question about, so if somebody comes in and they think they want to be on the leadership track.
Yeah.
What do you look for? What are people doing? How do you do it the right way?
I think you said it. I believe, granted, I'm not going to put a lot of stock in the new person from out of college to be the leader. However, I think that naturally grows and that naturally builds up, and you become a leader when people are inspired to follow you. Leaders aren't deemed. I don't take a sword and deem you a leader, right? I have plenty of younger consultants that I feel pretty comfortable putting in a leadership position, not leadership of people, but maybe leadership of this activity or this task. It doesn't have to be the full blown, I have employees kind of thing. That's not what a leader is. I don't even think you don't even have to have one employee and be a leader. you know. I do think that's what people think when they get into the role, and they think that I need people under me. I need to tell them what to do. That's what leaders do. That's not what leaders do. Leaders lead, and people follow them because they're inspired about what they're saying. They agree with them. They're ready to fall on the sword for you, right? Like, maybe that's too graphic, but you know, if you can get somebody to share your vision and contribute to the vision, that's I think a leader, you know, that can you know, you'll get top down direction, and that's inspiring or not inspiring. But if it isn't that inspiring, make it inspiring. You know, they had this direction. We have direction currently going on right now. And it's like, how do I make that better? You know, how can I help them do that? People are going to follow you. It's like, oh my God, you're right. We should do that. And then we're creating a project, or we're creating some kind of effort. And they all agreed. And you have input from other people around you, and leadership takes input. They just are there to take on the risk. I think a lot of times, you know, you're not going to blame somebody else. A good leader is not going to blame the people below you, because you're the one in charge. You know, I feel you shouldn't do that. Now you hold them accountable, but ultimately you're the one that made the decision, because you're the leader.
For someone looking to grow into it, I think there is a progression. I mean, of course, you've got to do your job well, your responsibilities.
You have to be a master of it.
Deliver, right? Then I like your thing about looking at other people's cups too, right? I mean, you've got to be an enabler of helping other people do their best work.
Yep.
I love for a while, one of the teams I was on, we wore, aging myself, which is not too hard to do, but we had a Steve Nash button from the Phoenix Suns. He was the point guard, if you don't know.
I'm not that old or that young. Freudian slip, sorry.
I'm the one that's that old.
Stringy hair.
But it was a reminder to us. We wore these actually at a conference we went to, because we saw our role, just like with his, of enabling the people around them to do amazing things, make them the best players they were. And that was like what we had to do. I think
because he wasn't tall. He was kind of short, scrappy.
But he made opportunities. He let people's strengths really show up, you know. And so I think there's getting your thing down, starting to enable others, and then, you know, running this project, running this meeting even, you know, starting to take that a little bit more responsibility that gets you on a path. I love too, like, if you're looking for leadership opportunities that are low risk, give you that good experience, find team projects, right? So within the team, we want to do maybe a learning unit on AI. Take charge of that.
Yeah.
Help
and
us
don't
build
sit
the
in the back.
curriculum. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Take, there's recognizable tasks to do. I'm going to take on these tasks, guys, and I'm going to get it done on time, ready to go, right? Yep. And if I don't get them on time, I'm going to raise my hand and say, hey, I got a problem. I'm not going to be able to get this done. Well, I have an issue with this. That's huge.
It is. So I think, you can find those opportunities and kind of graduate more and more. And it's so important what you said about the type of person you are too. If your idea of leadership is telling people what to do, please don't lead.
Oh my goodness.
I think especially in design, leadership also means composure, because especially if you're not the top person, if you're a middle person leading and you have people above you and people below you, you know, I think it's your job to remain like composed. Even if these people above you are stressed, you can't impact these people who are being creative, you know, because, you know, stress impacts creativity. And if you're going to be like a very stressed leader, you're going to stress out your people, and that's going to not lead to good outcomes either. So
that's for sure.
Composure.
Yeah. And I think either way, people will start performing under stress. I think maybe not a leader, but a person that has seen it a while, and they're not freaking out about something that looks huge. And because they've seen it a couple times, I think experience around that builds a leader, because they're the ones that need to not freak out. If the leader's freaking out, then we're doomed. I feel like you can fake it if you want, but like, but if you're like, hey guys, we've been through this before. I've been through it. I'm gonna walk you through it. and feel good about it. Make people feel comfortable, like you said. Like, you don't want them stressed, and you shouldn't be pushing your stress down onto them unless we're like up against it, and maybe we're like, hey, we're probably not going to get this right. What can we do? Right. I'm not freaking out because it is what it is, but like we gotta figure out, we got all these tasks and we got to get them done. How do we do that efficiently? But I do think there's a level of expectation sometimes coming out of school. They get the job. When am I going to be a director? It's like, you just got here. You know what I mean? And it is kind of a weird thing. I don't know if it comes out of the school or just feel pressured to make more money because I have all these bills I have to pay for now. I don't know.
I've noticed it too. I think it might be a generational change. Maybe I don't know, more ambition or more. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Do you see that, or I mean, I think that I've experienced it more with young people. I don't know if that's fair to say it really is, but
I probably did it when I was there.
And that's maybe we're just kind of
But we had more people above us saying,
slow down.
Right. Yeah, whatever, dude.
You're right. It's probably a little bit of amnesia here.
I don't know. I'm not as familiar with this. I think it's because it's my peers, and maybe I don't see it as much.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, there may be an eagerness to kind of lead and prove yourself early. And maybe this kind of refers back to the bowl in the china shop thing.
That's essentially, yeah.
Yeah. But I think a good way to combat that is to kind of, step back and observe your environment in the working space and say, where can I provide value? And if there is a gap, you can fill it. But if there's not really a gap, like, you shouldn't necessarily force yourself into like a leadership position that's not needed.
And I recognize the fact that people want more money. I totally get it. I want more money too. I do think there is a turnoff when I just hired you, and then a year later they're like, "Why don't I have $120,000?" And I'm kind of like, "All right, so let's figure out how we get to that point, right?" Because obviously there's a leveling thing here. You can't give you $120,000 unless you're some sort of arbitrary level that has been deemed by the people behind me. And so that means you are this level. And if that's what you're desiring, I want to give you that money. I just need, there's an output and there's accountability that needs to happen. So let's start upping your accountability. Let's see how you react. Let's not give you the ship, but we'll give you the sweep the floors responsibility or something that, there's some accountability there. I want to give you something that you can win and you can start growing it. That would be my really most PC answer of that question.
Yeah.
There's other answers that I've given, but that one's the most PC.
I did think it was very generous. I wasn't going to say it without you saying that, though.
I just, that number comes to mind because we had a slew of people, for some reason, at one point, wanting that particular number. I wonder.
You must have seen it on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're all talking.
If you're not getting paid this amount.
How much are you getting paid? We should go in. But it's not a put off. I totally get it. Like, you got bills, you got things to do, you got a car you want to buy. I totally get it. But we are a business, and money just doesn't grow on trees as much as the government says it does. It doesn't, or get printed. I don't know. It does. It comes from somewhere, and there's a trade. Money for services rendered in our company.
Yep. You'll feel best about it when it's earned.
Absolutely. I think that's it. We've exhausted this.
We covered a lot.
Even with the hiccup in the beginning. Hopefully I can edit that. But it's super great that you guys were able to have this discussion. One of many. I'm hoping to do this more and more, maybe even once a week, Let's go with once a week. I'm not gonna. Maybe twice a month. Is that a better progression of? I start thinking we should do this every day, and then I'm like, oh no, I don't have enough editing hours for this. But no, but it's awesome to have community leaders, inspiring community leaders that that can talk about these kind of topics.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's really good to see you again. And
You too.
I'm telling you, now more than ever, we're really thinking, what can we learn from the young people?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
It's a good time for a voice to be heard. And you said some great stuff today. A couple things
you.
I'm definitely going to remember.
Young people, make sure your voices are heard by saying it.
And then writing it down.
Writing.
All right. Well, thanks.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.